Hello.
So, hi everyone, and welcome to our latest panel session on social enterprise and impact, and how philanthropy and education play roles in enabling this to happen. So, first of all, welcome to this brilliant panel sessions, and thank you so much to our speakers for joining us here today. How are the three of you doing? Like, to warm up, I would just like to say, is this the Sunday morning that you usually have back to back with events? Kathara, do you want to tell us what your typical Sunday morning looks like when you're not being annoyed into coming for events like this?
I wish I could say I got to speak on awesome panels like this every Sunday morning, but no, my life is not that cool. So I'm really
only
grateful
after
to be here.
breakfast.
So yeah, after this, usually coffee, reading some news, resetting for the week, and hopefully spending some time with friends to refresh to get back into it on Monday.
All right. Well, thank you all for taking your time out on the weekend. We'll make sure we wrap this up professionally and on time so you can have your coffee and catch up with those friends. Rebecca, what about you? Tell us, what does your normal Sunday morning look like?
It's a good question. I think usually I try and allocate Sundays to doing the life admin stuff, so just trying to catch up on everything that was piling up during the week and just, kind of taking that time to decompress as well, echoing what Kathara was saying.
Wow, life admin things. That makes this is how you know I'm a child, because the first thing that came to my brain was chores. But okay, life admin. I'm going to replace that in my vocabulary. Someone will be like, what are you doing? Life administrative work this weekend. I like that. Thank you. Yep, Katara, hashtag adulthood. Yeah. Steven, what about you? What is a typical Sunday? I think it's Sunday evening for you right now as well,
Yeah,
right?
it's almost going to be 12 a.m. here. So heading towards Monday. So very, very happy to be here. So I think Sunday evening. So you want to know about my Sunday evening, or you want to know about my Sunday morning?
We'll do evening for you, just to keep it fresh.
Okay, I think since we all do work all the time, we just work with the teachers, the parents, the students, all these things. So they will just keep on asking questions. Imagine you have to work with hundreds or thousands of schools all across in Malaysia. So we just always reply their messages, and most of the time the teachers will be like, "You working on Sunday night?" I'll be like, "Yeah." So they're just surprised, but we were like, "You know what? It's just fine. You just start calling me. I'm just answering." So it's most of the time it's just working with these people and having fun. That's all.
Yeah. I think for teachers, Monday morning is always the hot press zone. So Sunday night makes sense. All right. And Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us. So we're just starting off with a quick icebreaker on what do you normally do on a Sunday morning when you're not imparting brilliant wisdom to students, the delegates all around the world. So how's a typical Sunday morning in your life?
Yeah, it's totally the get together my life day. So it could be literally anything from chores. Everything can fall apart a little bit here and there during the weekends. Just time to tweak it all up, or just trying to get ready for the week. Maybe it's sending out the emails I probably should have sent out later in the week, so I don't feel too bad when I start the next day, or things like that, or even just a time to be a little bit more creative with the work that I need to do. So
No, very,
get
very
together
cool.
my life day.
Sort out life. Okay. And I think you're all very responsible adults who are, hashtag adulthood in the bag. Very cool. And why I ask that in a sense is because for many of us, when we think about what we do, when we think about, who we are, it's not just confined to specifically doing one task a day, or not specifically just looking at, what role do I play, but everything that we do exists within an ecosystem, whether it's self-care, whether it's hanging out with friends, whether it's, the work that we do. And similarly, like that, I think that most things do as well occur in ecosystems, especially when we talk about things like social impact and social entrepreneurship, which is the theme of this panel. And I feel like when we learn about social entrepreneurship, it's always amazing to hear about brilliant founders, brilliant social enterprises who go out there and make the change. But we also forget about the whole ecosystem that prepares them, makes them ready, gets them to the spot where they are at to actually go ahead and make that change. And hence why today's panel focuses on education and philanthropy, specific to social impact, because I thought that these were two of the very strong pillars that actually contribute towards impact in that ecosystem that we don't often get to talk about. So I'm really grateful to have all four of you here. I think you represent four very diverse and interesting perspectives from the nonprofit angle, from an administrative coordination angle, from a foundation angle. So getting all of our bases covered as we talk about this ecosystem while ignoring the actual social entrepreneurs. They can come in later for their own panel. But yes, so to start off in a sense, all of you work in a space where it's very high impact. You can see literally almost every day, I hope, the impact that you have in others, whether it's direct beneficiaries, Stephen, Tiffany, through your nonprofits, or whether it's Rebecca through the students you work with, or whether it's Kathara through the other organizations that you're able to fund, that you're able to ensure gets the support that they need. So as much as high impact is very rewarding, it can also be, as I've heard, very stressful, and not all the time you can see those direct returns. So why did you choose to go into the space of social entrepreneurship and social impact in the first place? Shall we start with Tiffany? We've got to bully you a little bit for coming in a second late.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess I never saw myself going into social entrepreneurship, honestly. I think it was more always about finding a career that was along the lines of helping people in general. And I think, I feel like, especially when you're going through college, like you're only given like 8 options most of like what to pursue. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll go into like the medical field because, you're helping people, saving people's lives. And like that was just like the most straightforward, like linear type of answer I could kind of find. And I think I studied sociology, and like there was one day I remember learning in one of my classes about like this idea of social entrepreneurship, and I was like, whoa, wait, that's like kind of cool. So I just went down a whole rabbit hole, and just thought this made so much sense, and was just like so fascinated by like all the companies that I was like looking at, and just seeing that like, well, like impact doesn't have to just like come in one form. And I think that was like the coolest part, because it could just show like you could be creative and make an impact. You could like make impact in all sorts of ways that weren't so clear. And I just thought that was like the coolest part about social entrepreneurship. And that was kind of how I found out about it, and just went down a further rabbit hole to kind of get to the work where I'm at today.
Amazing. Very, very nice start to kick us off. Kathara, do you want to go next and share how did you get into the world of philanthropy, impact, and so on?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. I really resonate with what Tiffany said. I feel like when I was back in school, I had no idea what options there were. I was very curious about the world. And in particular, I was very curious and also mad about the inequality that I saw. I recognized, I had access to education, I had access to healthcare, I had access to opportunities. And the more people I met and the more I learned about the world, I realized that talent was equally distributed around the world, but opportunity was not. And so I essentially started on this quest of looking for the way that I felt like I could have the biggest impact. So I got really into microfinance for a while, and then I got into education, and then I thought maybe I'd join the government. And I realized that even though I didn't necessarily have the silver bullet or the solution, eventually I found myself in philanthropy, which really allows other people who have the silver bullet or solution to receive funds and support and cheering on from, where I sit at the Skoll Foundation. So it's been a meandering journey. Who knows where it will go after this? But I think, once I learned that you could have a career and try and make the world a better place, I was like, yeah, I want to do that, whatever that looks like.
That's amazing. I don't know which is more quotable, the fact that you said talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not, or the part where you said you're curious but mad. Like I like both of those. Like very, very good points. Yeah, but I think moving into kind of the education part of it, Stephen and Rebecca can probably share a little bit more on that. Stephen, why don't you start us off? I think you work very closely with teachers, and you work very closely through the work that PMDK does to kind of redistribute opportunities to those who need it. So how did you get into this space in the first place?
Okay, it was a long story, but not so long. But I was like, what Tiffany said as well. When you are young, you don't really know the opportunities that's available out there. Very limited options. So similar, I don't know much things about what's happening and everything. All I know is I'm good at certain things. So I went on to pursue in my college. So halfway, I realized that's not what I wanted. So I was like really depressed. I don't know what I want. I went to a working world. I realized it's not what I want as well. So really got into that mode of depression. Don't know what to do. Just keep on circling and all these things. So I met this wonderful platform back, I think 4 or 5 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, called ET Ideas. It's a social business incubator back here in Malaysia. So I just fell in love with the place. It's not the place, it's the people. Everybody there love what they're doing. They're very happy, and at the same time they just give back to the people at the rate that they can. Could be spending their time, it can be sharing their experience, giving money, whatever it is. So I just wanted to become part of this environment. That's it. I don't care what else. So I slowly figure out what am I good at. I find out I love talking. To be really honest, in the beginning stage, I don't even know the thing called social entrepreneurship exists. I don't even know the word exists. And I don't really care about others because my problem was my biggest world problem. So I'm trying to solve my own problems. But along the way, I realized that I actually met the right type of people at the right time, like meeting ET ideas, I think I met Harsha when I was figuring out what I want to do very back then. I saw young Harsha there. So I met a lot of right people at the right time, which turned my life around. But when I look at the people from my neighborhood, because my neighborhood is not really a nice neighborhood, all the bad things that you can think of right now is happening there. That kind of place. I live up in that place. So I look at the friends there. All of them are my friends, but they don't have that opportunity that I have. So that's when I started to like, you know what? Let me just go and share that this kind of things exist to these people. So that's how I just got into that, just by sharing to people like, hey, there is a different platform exists in case you want to try out and everything. And like what Tiffany told, once you enter into the rabbit hole, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So I just really fell in love with working with the students, the teachers, with the people around here, impacting them. So yeah, so that's how I got into that.
Yeah, we often joke that the teachers like you more than they like us students, but yes, I'll not go into that. We'll only start a debate. But thank you so much for sharing. And Rebecca, you right now run Venture Labs Social Enterprise Initiative along with amazing Julia, who's not here today. I know you have to put up with students like me and many of the ones we probably saw today showing up at your office and giving you lots of headaches. So tell us, why did you choose social entrepreneurship in the first place as a field that you wanted to get into?
I think my experience is like similar to what everyone else has been saying. Like it's social entrepreneurship isn't like widely known about, and I certainly didn't know about it while I was in college. I was based in Ireland for a few years and worked for a grant making organization there, and they funded social innovation projects. So that's kind of what got me into measuring and evaluating the impact of certain projects and ventures. And then when I moved back here, I think, you really want to contribute. I'm from the greater Philadelphia area. You really want to contribute to the infrastructure and the ecosystem. And, at Penn as well, it's an emergent idea. It's, constantly being spoken about. And, we're still working on a definition for social entrepreneurship ourselves. So, we're all figuring it out.
It reminds me of something that I was learning in a course actually. So I was doing, unfortunately for me, a life science course, and they said there is still no 100% accurate definition for life. Like how do you define life? So I think social entrepreneurship is similar. There is no one way to define how do you create social impact, how do you create a social enterprise. So I definitely see coming up with a definition like for that is totally something that's not easy. And moving on from there, I think I wanted to also talk about specifically diving into each of your organizations, how each of your areas of expertise and your work actually enables social enterprises today to create the impact that they have on their communities and enable these social entrepreneurs to actually thrive. So maybe we can actually start, Kathara, with you and about the work that you're doing. Right now, you serve as Chief of Staff at the Skoll Foundation. And I know that the foundation supports so many amazing nonprofits, enterprises to do and enable the work that they're currently carrying out. So I just wanted to know a little bit about how does a foundation like yours really established, amazing. Ensure that you are actually finding the right partners, the right social initiatives that are most able to benefit from your resources and from your funding in a sense. And how do you ensure that that impact is carried on into their beneficiaries?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think a little bit of the history of the Skoll Foundation, and then I can answer your question more specifically, is that, our original founder and first CEO helped us dream up what social entrepreneurship was over 20 years ago. And so I started working at the foundation now about 5 years ago, and it was really cool. I went back on my old laptop, which I probably should have given back to Apple and traded it in. But I found like a list of my bookmarks, and it had the Skoll Foundation on it from when I was in college. And so it was a very full circle moment of like, oh, so I was thinking about this. Maybe I was dreaming it up when I was back in school, lost and
Crazy. Oh my goodness.
trying to figure out what to do. So today, the Skoll Foundation, about 20 years in, we're a platform for social innovation. And I think one of the reasons why I'm really drawn to the type of foundation and the type of philanthropy that we do is that we really try to take the ego out of it and say, hey, we actually don't have the solution. What we're really interested in is what are the problems in climate and health, in inclusive economies and racial justice, in effective governance and democracy, and actually go out and look for incredible social innovators that they themselves have ideas and solutions for how to solve those problems. And so our team builds networks. They go out and talk to amazing people and try and find and unearth these ideas and solutions that we think can really change an entire system. So Harsha, I love how you're talking about ecosystems. Each of these issues that we all care about are an ecosystem that interact with each other in ways that cross over. And so we're looking for nonprofits and other leaders who have ideas that are going to fundamentally shift and change the way we look at different elements of these massive global problems. So it's an intensive process of going out and finding those folks. And then I think that, to your point, not every nonprofit is a good fit for us. It may be too small. It may be too big. They may not need our money. They may be looking for something different. And so it's kind of like dating. You want to find someone who wants what you're offering and vice versa. And so it's a pretty intensive process, but we think a lot about how we exist in the ecosystem of other foundations and philanthropists as well, and try and fill in gaps and making sure that we're spreading out our resources, ultimately to benefit the most people in the world and try and make progress on these massive issues. So hopefully that answers your question, Harsha.
No, it does answer that beautifully, and I really like how you said it. Not everyone is a good fit. Personally, I think like as someone who has done fundraising, I tear at every rejection. So and at times like people say, no, it's good that you didn't get this particular thing. It's just not a right fit, and I'm like, no, but why? And only in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, that would not have worked as well as I'd have thought it would. But definitely, I understand that a bit now, coming removed from that situation. I'm really glad you shared that, because I think that keeping that in mind as people going out there and looking for funds, and as nonprofits itself, really helps us understand that it's not just about where's the funding, where's the resources, but where are the partnerships that can help? Where are the chains in the ecosystem that's actually going to create the most impact? So thank you. I thought it was a really good point to raise. And I think maybe we can move to Stephen, because it kind of brings us to the next step in the chain in a sense. So Stephen, you actually run the nonprofit called the Dynamic and Creative Minds Association that essentially helps run several large initiatives at the grassroots level for students, families, and more who wish to become social entrepreneurs. So my question is, how do you go about planning your initiatives and making sure that they are relevant to your target audiences? Because as we said, students, parents, teachers are some of the most, I wouldn't say difficult to work with, but they come in such diverse shapes and forms. How do you pick the target audience, and how do you make sure what you do is relevant?
Yeah, I think back here in Malaysia, we call it primary and secondary school, like high school, and students who from age 7 to 12, and then there is 13 to 17, a different age group of students. And if you really ask me, I will even break that into the primary school, which is 7 to 12. I will break that into another two, because the first 7 years old to 9 years old, they are totally different from 10 years old to 12 years old. And even though they are studying the same school, they're studying the same education, the same teachers, same syllabus, same subject, but they're just totally different. Like for the students who are aged from 7 to 12, you just say hello, they are very excited. Like they're just very excited to see a new face in the school that is not their teachers. They are happy. And then there is year 4 and year 4, which is like 10 years old to 12 years old. They are still excited, but you need to give a reason for them to be excited. Like you just come there and talk something nonsense, they're not going to listen to you. If you go there, talk something about education, they're not listening to that as well. Like find their interest, and then we talk about it, like tell them about like how they can do this. They're very, very happy about it. And then there is another set of schools students who is like 13 and 17. They just hit puberty and they just go to the different world. Like, from going from this school to a high school is totally different culture shock and a totally different way. And for them, whatever you say, they're not going to engage at all. They will just stare back at you. Even you tell the most funniest joke on earth, they will just look at you. They don't even not even ever smile. So we were like, how to make you how to make you talk to us, because when you talk to us only, we need to know, like what you say, we have to stay relevant to all these people. If not, we cannot just tell one thing to everybody. We have to find what they are interested in, then giving them that will make them more how to say more interested to what we are trying to do, and they are more interested to listen to what we are doing, and they will work with us a bit more in future. So that is why when we go to schools to this, go to the meet them and all these things, we also bring the young one together with us that we have already has been working with and already has been guiding them and everything. Because the youngsters in the schools, they are very much very happy to talk to a fellow student than another adult. Like if I am there, for some reason they love talking to me, I don't know why. But if there is another adult there, they don't want to talk to them, because they don't know how to connect to them. They cannot say, they just cannot handle them actually. So we bring the young one to talk to them as well. Like imagine that there is a 14-year-old girl who is having some problems, and we also brought a 14-year-old trainer like from our side, and they actually facing the same problem: homework, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, they're facing the same problem. So they can relate to each another very well, and they start sharing things with us. So from there we can see what we can do to actually find a better way to do the programs or whatever that we are doing to impact them at the bigger scale actually. And we also partner with Ascendance here in Malaysia as well, International Youth Movement, to see how we can bring this thing together, because both of us are doing the same things. Instead of doing two things separately, if we can just combine with one and do this, we can impact many people. So that's how we do. That is students, and the teachers is a totally different ball game because some teachers are very, very happy about what we are doing, because they want to do something different for the students. So they saw us doing things. They are very, very happy to do that. But there are some teachers who not really do, and because for them it's like, it's disrupting the normal way of them doing things. So we also have to work with them and all these things. So it's all about like learning from them actually. Like they will tell whatever that we have to do, and then we just go ahead and do it in our way that give the best results. Yeah.
I like that strategy, and I think that it is something that we have seen in Ascendance works as well. I think we've discussed this before, where many times kids, when they see a survey form, at least in Malaysia where we are used to, they'll fill in the survey form with what they think is the right answer. So it can be sometimes hard to get to what's actually the root cause of the problem. So one of the strategies that we've seen work is bringing people that they can relate to, people in their age group who have maybe a bit more awareness, a bit more understanding of what's going on, and working together with them to develop programs and initiatives. So very, very nicely said. Tiffany, I thought we could move to you as well. The work you did with Fulphil is absolutely amazing. You actually bring curriculums regarding social entrepreneurship to mainstream education. Again, that is not an easy feat at all, and it requires a lot of, I would say, research, a lot of thought, a lot of planning in it. So tell us a little bit more about your work and this mission to do so. What were the first few steps that you actually took to make this happen, to actually contextualize all of that understanding into a curriculum and to implement that with the teachers in a school?
Yeah, definitely. I guess Fulfill definitely started off with this idea that I had that like everyone is capable of making some type of impact. But the thing is that oftentimes people don't really know how. And it wasn't even just about social entrepreneurship. Social entrepreneurship is definitely like a medium to do so, but like that's also not the only way. And I think I wanted to figure out a way to like democratize this type of knowledge for like how do you make an impact. And that was kind of where our curriculum came in for the education for our high school students. And basically it was a lot of back and forth for many different iterative processes. But I guess the cleanest way to say it is that we started off first with like a few types of pilot workshops. Even before the pilot workshops, I remember when I was a student at Penn, I like put out like this market research survey to like a handful of schools in Philadelphia, as well to kind of gauge like what are high school students thinking when it comes to impact and starting something even like with the intention of maybe doing a social entrepreneurship curriculum first. And the numbers definitely inform that, you know, there is a need for this. Like a lot of everyone, like close to everyone wanted to make a difference. A lot of people did not know how to. It was like, I think almost like 80%, 80 something or more percent of people wanted to make a difference. About 75 or so percent did not know how. And then of that 75, 60 something percent mentioned that they were interested in potentially starting something, but also did not know how. So I think it was definitely interesting to see. Then launched a series of like some pilot workshops of like, this is what social entrepreneurship is and all that. And also going into some more business model workshops as well too. And then we were able to get like a little bit of funding to try out like a 5-week long thing with just about like 10 to 20 high school students in Philly to test out this curriculum of how to go from an idea and scale into like a whole business model over the course of 5 weeks. So almost like a little mini incubator accelerator program for high school students. And overall, we got so much good feedback. We came in with all this curriculum and we had to like change it up every single day as we were going to the next day because like we got so much great feedback. We built that into a curriculum to kind of just go into schools to be like a turnkey curriculum for teachers. And then that was just when COVID hit. And I'm really glad that we did that because we didn't have to be on the ground to do that work. It was already going. We had to weather through COVID. It was really hard to get into schools. And so right now, I think we actually, it's actually really recent exciting news. On Friday, we actually published all of our courses to become more accessible to not just students, but everyone inside and outside the classroom into like consumer books. So now they're now on pre-order, available on Amazon. So going to slowly release out in 2023, but it's like our impact cheat code. And basically there's courses around like social entrepreneurship, diversity, equity, inclusion, sustainability, mental health and wellness, financial literacy, and 21st century core skills. So each one of those is a book. But you know, it was never really straightforward, but it was like one thing led to another. And it was always about how can we get everyone to be motivated to make a difference.
No, absolutely amazing. And I think that you have like teacher versions and student versions as well available on your website for your courses, which I think is absolutely amazing in terms of making it more accessible, as you said, to more people. So in a way, I look forward now that I can participate. I didn't know I could. So thank you for the information. Very, very cool. And I think someone else who can speak a lot on kind of building up the curriculum is actually Rebecca. So you are actually the program like coordinator for Venture Lab Social Enterprise Initiative, which is relatively new. And over the last few months, we've seen remarkable growth within the initiative of how your team and you have been setting up the infrastructure and launching the entire program for students. So I'm really curious to find out what were the first few things that your team actually focused on when developing this initiative to support the social entrepreneurs in Penn's ecosystem? And how did you decide to focus on these among the many different things that you could start off with?
Yeah, so I mean, I think when you're starting a program and when you're launching any sort of initiative, one of the core values or social value principles is stakeholder consultation, and that is just invaluable. Like the process that we've been doing right now, and basically this entire semester, we've been meeting with students like yourself and student organization representatives, and people enjoy being asked how they feel about certain things. And, it's kind of like allowed us they point us to resources that I didn't even know existed within Penn. And as someone like a relatively new staff member at Penn, that's so important and so valuable. And like we could have gone into this program and just be like, yeah, so I mean, I think that based on our own experiences, and your own experience is valuable, of course, but at the end of the day, if you have a beneficiary group that you're trying to serve and support, you have to have their input in every step of the development for programs and programming. Oh, you're on mute, Harsha.
Okay, that was embarrassing. See, Rebecca, your answer shocked me so much that I forgot to unmute myself. See, you guys should just try to be less interesting so that I can recall the basic functionalities of a web conferencing tool. But no, that was a really, really good answer. And I loved how you touched on stakeholder participation. I wanted to elaborate more on that, especially because within ecosystems, you often have many different stakeholders. So you have beneficiaries, you have potential funders, or even you have two different groups of beneficiaries or people that you need to work with in order to put out the programming, put out the information. How do you manage different, or I wouldn't say conflicting, but more like different stakeholder needs and wants at any given times? Like, how do you balance all of these different groups of people when you're looking at creating impact? It could be between funders and beneficiaries, as I said, or it could even be within the community, when there's part of the community that needs a specific resource and another part of the community that also needs something but has a completely different list of needs that need to be served in a way. So all of us, of course, want to create the most impact, but resources are limited. So how do you allocate that based on the stakeholders that you have to serve currently? Shall we start with Tiffany, since we put you at the last spot for a couple of times?
Yeah, it's so hard to even answer that question. It's such a hard question, to be honest. I think definitely leveraging your current network, and whatever that network is for you. I think I definitely believe in just like that concept of like the 6 degrees of separation and everything, or it's like everyone in the world is at least around 6 connections away from knowing everyone. I would want to believe it, but I definitely think that like even just talking to the people that are within your like arm's length network, and even asking like if they know anyone to be able to be helpful. That's definitely like the biggest thing I would recommend for just anyone who's interested into getting into like anything out there. But in terms of like philanthropy and education, I think there's so many resources. I mean, I think like I think I remember when I was interested in philanthropy, I remember just doing a crazy Google search of everything. And I remember like the Skoll Foundation was actually the first one, like one of the first ones that popped up. But like there's so many big types of resources and philanthropy is so an impact. Like there's such a huge spectrum from the nonprofit to the for-profit sectors. And like it's hard to really pin down like one go-to resource because there's just so many. Like you've got the Skoll Foundation, you've got like Bill and Melinda Gates, you've got like the United Nations, you've got like all these like impact, like social impact VCs too. Like there's so many different things. But I think anything that you can do to kind of get more into your ecosystem, whether it's people or groups, and just poking them to try to understand like how you can continue to build your network and knowledge. I think that's so important.
No, I like that. Expand the ecosystem, expand the resources. Don't feel like you need a limit. That's a very nice answer to this. Okay, very very well said. And since you picked essentially Kathara, like she picked you, not me. I'm so sorry. Would you like to go next on how you and the work that you guys do go ahead with balancing some of these different stakeholder needs at the same time?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to jump in. I think that I'm going to give sort of two answers to this question. The first is that foundations and philanthropy exist in a somewhat of a different space than when I had worked in nonprofits or government or even the for-profit sector before. Nonprofits are accountable to their donors and their beneficiaries. For-profits need to have money to come in the door from their customers or investors. When you're at an endowed foundation like the Skoll Foundation or the Gates Foundation, you have all of the resources that you really need to do the work. And so you're in kind of a different space where you have many different stakeholders around you. But I think for us, the North Star ends up becoming our mission, vision, and values, and really trying to remember what the North Star is that we're trying to accomplish, because we're not looking for donors, we're not looking for customers. It's sort of a different place in the ecosystem. And so remembering what that North Star is super important. That being said, we have a lot of different key stakeholders that have a stake in what we do. And that includes our founder, that includes our board, that includes the grantees that we give money to, it includes the larger network that we cultivate and other key partners. And so each of those stakeholders has a role to play in the impact that we want to create in the world. And sometimes they have different opinions on what we should or should not be doing. And I think it's really about inviting those voices in, hearing that feedback, and using it to help us navigate the journey, and really finding that balance. And again, keeping that North Star in mind. And then one last thing I'll add is that the Skoll Foundation is based in Silicon Valley. We're in Palo Alto, and I think we've been on a journey to expand our circle of key stakeholders. So kind of what you were talking to, Tiffany, of how do we get out of our own echo chamber? How do we go and engage with leaders in different parts of the US, different parts of the world? And so that's been a big part of our journey of expanding that circle, hearing more voices, and sort of recognizing the power dynamics that exist in the field, and probably how much we don't know coming from the Silicon Valley perspective.
No, but that's a very enlightened route to take in a sense, and even to the earlier point of, not just expanding the resources, but also knowing that okay, we hold this power, and being able to allocate that responsibly. I think it's really really. I think we need more foundations like that out in the world. Like honestly, very cool. Rebecca, moving to you in a sense, and the work that you do with Venture Labs and with the things that you do. I think among the students itself, you see 100 different personalities a day. I think in the ecosystem itself, there's so many resources. There's so many places that you can go to. How do you essentially make the best links in a way, or focus on the right things to get started with while navigating this ecosystem of social entrepreneurship?
I'm so sorry, I lost internet for a minute. Would you be able to just repeat your question?
No worries, no worries. You just waited for the time I was asking the question, right? But anyway, talking about the social entrepreneurship ecosystem, you work with many different students, many different stakeholders, whether it's people who are providing the content, the information, the courses, or alumni coming back and sharing their expertise. How do you navigate this whole ecosystem to make sure the best links are made and the best resources are available for the social entrepreneurs in your space?
I think, you link back to the stakeholder consultation. Like, the more that we connect with students, the more resources that we become aware of. And, like, oh, well, I've never connected with this center, but, this student did, and they found it really successful. So it allows me then to point, other students who may have similar, experiences or similar obstacles. And, once you start building that evidence base during your stakeholder consultation, it allows you to speak with more like authority on the types of resources that they should be availing of, because you've seen it be successful in other capacities.
Okay, very, very cool. And Stephen, why, like, moving to you in a sense, how do you make sure that the best needs, like as you said earlier, that many teachers and students, there's sometimes a disconnect, many times there's a disconnect between different generations. So how do you mend all of those different disconnects in a sense to make sure that you get the best results for the people in the ecosystem, while at the same time making sure all of the other people, whether they're teachers, they're officials, or whether they're people in the nonprofit itself or partners like Ascendance, how do you make everyone happy at the same time while increasing the impact that you guys do?
I think making everybody happy at the same time, like in the work that you do, is pretty much impossible, because there is some people at some time they will say something, obviously, but we try to make as many people as happy. But at the end of the day, what we are focusing on is the people, is the students, is whoever that we are working with at that point of time. They are our main focus, actually. So in terms of funders wise, we are looking for a lot of funders. There are a lot of funders coming in, even through this amazing summit. There are a lot of new funders that comes in and all these things. So with that funding, we're able to go to a school saying, hey, we can do this program in your school, and we went inside, do programs and all these things. But one thing that we do in here in PMDK is, we don't want to just get the funding. We also want the sponsors to involve in the work that we do, so that they see where their funds is going. Obviously, it's an option for the founders whether they wanted to come in, they wanted to, is whether you want to on the ground to do the work or not, because it's not easy. Because some schools that we go is really really in a rural area, where you have to go into mountains. I mean, you don't have to hike the mountain, you have
You
to
do
drive.
find it yourself, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to drive for hours. I think this year most of the time I was on the road than in my own house. So you always are there. So we try to include our sponsors, or those who are giving the funds, to be there, meet the students, be with them as much as they can. I remember, I think this is one of the school we went. We actually brought one of the founder. They were very happy to be there, but I just told them straight up, I'm not going to treat you as a founder. The funders, I'm going to give you some jobs to do, because I need some people to help to manage these things. I maybe would ask you to carry the boxes. They'd be like, oh, no, bro, don't do it. But because I don't treat them as the sponsors who give money, oh my God, just treat them as a fellow people or trainers or whoever is there to help us out. So when we feel that when we include them in, they're just very happy. After 5 minutes, I see they sit together with the students in their lines and talking to them. Like, they just get into the vibes, because we treat them as similar as who we are, the other people. So that's how we keep that particular people, keep engaged with us. Because once they see the impact, they become a part of it while we are doing it. They never left. They won't leave most of the time. They will always with us. And again, the teachers and the students is all trial and error, because we did meet a lot of amazing teachers this year that don't mind to wake up in the middle of the night to make sure that this student is fine. There are a lot of amazing students who I met, even like I remember this one particular school we went in a very, very rural area in Malaysia. I don't even know this kind of place exists. That's how rural this place is. So I was even a bit afraid to drive inside there, because you were like, this is a road. So that's how you feel. But when you go there, there is a huge school of 700 plus students in there. 700 plus is actually a very big number school in that particular rural area, and so many students there. And the teacher was just telling, my students are great, they can do a lot of things, but they just don't receive opportunities like how a normal student receives. So when we go into the school, the students are just happy. And the boy wanted to become a singer. I just told someone who in our platform who actually made it as a singer, and the boy just cried, like, you think I can do that? I was like, yeah, you can do that. Then we show the person who is doing that. Then his answer is like, I want to do this, but nobody in my village know how to do this. So we give them the opportunity to meet with this kind of people as well. So there are I'm this part of this business incubator back in Malaysia, ETIDS. I mentioned this before. There are wonderful people there who are following their passion in various fields like arts, science, whatever it is. So we also bring them in to meet them as well. So that's how we keep all the people happy, and also the parents at the other side. some parents are really happy with what we are doing. Some parents not, because the students are very much into starting their own startup or figuring out their passion. They sometimes like the education part of it, like scoring in their exams. So the parents make problems with that. They're not happy with that and everything. So we have to, fine tune, like saying, give them some time and all these things. So it's always the trial and error. But so far we never run into any problem. So I think we are doing good.
No, very, very nicely said. And I love that story of how you said when you bring the stakeholders with you. And I think many times that is the best way to, mend different discrepancies between expectations. When everyone is at the same place, looking at the same thing, feeling the same thing, it's hard to disagree. And you bring together the needs and you bring together the wants into a single spot. So very, very nicely answered. I thought it was a really good answer. And unfortunately, our panel is starting to wind down, and we've got to draw conclusions, sadly. And I wanted to just end it on this. All four of you play very important pillars in both education and philanthropy, whether it's through your work, whether it's through the organizations you are part of, or even through your own personal initiatives and the time that you spend in these initiatives as well. So, in kind of wrapping up, and as part of our parting words as well, feel free to include your final remarks. But I wanted to end with asking each of you, in your opinion, what is one thing that the ecosystem of social entrepreneurship needs that if you had, you would be able to play your role in this ecosystem much better? It could be as an educator, it could be as a nonprofit, it could be as a foundation. What do you need from this ecosystem? And I don't think our student delegates out there will have all of the answers, but hopefully it'll get them thinking into the broader sense of how this ecosystem works. So, what is one thing that you would need, whether it would give you the ability to cure cancer or end world hunger? What would the one thing be? Rebecca, do you want to start?
Oh my God, that's such a hard question.
I know I limited it to one thing in your role. It was a bit of a stretch, but yeah.
No, I think like I think like taking stock of the resources that are out there. Like there are so many resources, and just with the capabilities online in like a Zoom world that we are living in now, like you're able to connect with so many people that you may otherwise have literally never met. So I mean, like, just I guess doing as much research and information and data gathering as possible, and just I guess being able to collate those resources into like a concentrated kind of being able to I guess inform your path would be, I think, most helpful for me.
All right. Okay. So when I invented the master directory for all social impact resources, you'll be the first person to send it. Very
Yeah,
cool.
do.
Stephen, do you want to go next?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
One thing that you would need in this social impact ecosystem that would enable the work you are doing to be much more impactful, to be much better in itself.
Okay, again, it's a very hard question, even though I asked for the second time. But I will say, need more time, because starting a social enterprise is not easy, as you may know. And it's not like you have an idea, I can work with you an idea, then we can build a social enterprise. If it is that easy, then we don't need the time, we can do it very easily. But when a student or even a youngster or anybody that comes in that say, hey, I want to do this or anything, first of all, we need to work with them in their own personal development basis, because without having the strong foundation, they can't develop as a person, like start their social enterprise and everything. Because even though the social enterprise is getting more famous right now, but still many students are not aware about this. Like even back then when I was studying, I have no idea what is social enterprise is, until I step into ET ideas and all these things. So we need time to actually develop this particular students, because when you have the time, you can really work with them for lay the right foundation, and see how you can slowly develop them up, and also make them focus on the goal along the way. Because like what I mentioned, like the normal way of doing business is still famous than the social enterprise. So when we develop a student, when when they didn't have the right foundation, they will tend to focus more on the profit than the giving part. of the work. So like again, when we work with the student, we have to look at the like the teachers, the students, the parents, their own guardians, their own stakeholders that they have. So all of them looking for the results, but you cannot just simply produce the results in 1 year or even 2 years. You need the time. We need the time from each and every one of them to actually to give us the time so that we can work with the students and give the correct impact, like make them see the impact and go focus on their goals and do whatever that they want, create their social enterprise as well. So yeah, I would say time, need more time.
All right, very nice answer, and especially because I think a lot of the students PMDK works with, and a lot of the work that you guys is making social entrepreneurs, not just from the best of students, but also developing social entrepreneurs from those who'd be considered the worst of students in a
Yeah.
sense, and at the
They have
same
the
time
best ideas.
they are the best, but we can't tell everyone. No, they are the best in a sense, but giving them the same opportunity that would often not come to them, and that takes time because it's a whole
Yeah.
different mindset that you've got to rewire in a way. Nice answer, Tiffany. Should you want to go next? What's one thing that you need to go out there and cure cancer?
Yeah, I think so. What I'm gonna say is just like so specific that I found in like my own work. So as someone who's like running a nonprofit, I remember in my program at Penn for nonprofit leadership, um, there were like two schools of thought of how to run a nonprofit, and one of them was like the more traditional route of like seek funding, grants, and everything, like the traditional routes of funding. And the other one was like, you need to generate sustainable revenue as well. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I've been able to find is that I'm definitely a big fan of like the second school of thought. And I think being someone who wants to have that sustainability, like I've actually found it really hard to apply for grants on the more local scale that can be supportive of nonprofits that have that more sustainable form of revenue. So I think like it would be great to kind of have more partners, funders out there that are more, I guess, open and supportive of like the second school of thought of like how can we support nonprofits even more that are already also trying to support themselves. And I think that was always a hard part because I think once we got like bigger types of funding, like they were supportive of that, but then the local scale like of funding, which is almost like the first gate to kind of hop through. Like that was almost like impossible to get over. At least from like my own experience. Maybe I did it wrong. I don't know. But I think that was actually the hard part. So I would love to see more types of funders out there that are more open to like nonprofits trying to be more sustainable in that sense.
No. I think that's no, I really like that point because it is something that I've seen as well. That many times when we run the nonprofit, we're just looking at what other revenue streams can we do to keep this going, to keep the impact going? How can we do this? But often that doesn't put us in one or another category of a for-profit or non-profit. It puts us in the social enterprise space, which is still in the middle and still being defined, which makes it a little tougher when we're applying for grants, when we're applying for foundational funding, because they're like, but you make revenue. And we're like, yeah, but we're making revenue because we need to move forward. We need to keep the impact going. So it's kind of a catch-22. Is that the third? Yeah, but yeah. So I'm going to support you on that one. I'm going to put my vote in for that to do so. And Katara, let's end with you. So you've got to blow our minds here. What is the one
Oh
thing that
gosh,
yeah,
no
yeah, and
pressure.
you've got lots of resources. So anything, what can we do to
Yeah.
basically help change?
Yeah, I want to see more alliances and collaboration and partnerships. I think that the issues that we face as a global society are way too big for any of us to be working in silos or to be way too focused on my idea is the best or my idea is the most important. And I think that something that we're seeing is that for real change to be made, Coalitions need to come together, larger collaborations. And so I want to see really creative ways to partner and to think bigger. And we're thinking about that, and I want to call out to others of understand who is in your ecosystem, who could you be partnering with, who could you combine forces with, because if it's really about impact, you kind of have to get your own ego out of the way, and really focus on how you're going to make the most change.
All right, very, very cool. 4 very different answers, but 4 answers that are very, very important. And thank you all for being here on this panel with me, with our audience. I really appreciated this conversation and I learned a lot. And thank you for helping us demystify a little bit this whole ecosystem that supports all of the social entrepreneurs out there. So thank you so much. And I hope that you enjoyed speaking to me as much as I enjoyed speaking to you. All right. And now, thank you. Passing it back over to our MCs.